But you know, Mr. Chikoma, there are those who have tried to link the security challenge we have to immediately after the elections. They think that, you know, political thugs are armed by some politicians who take advantage of them or using them as thugs. And thereafter, after the elections, if there isn't that patronage, quote and unquote, these guys have to find something to it. Is that school of thought tenable?
Yes, usually when you are talking about factors that drive insecurity, it's usually not one, it's a medley. So in terms of the proximate causes or why this spike will be happening at this time. So you could factor in that these are people who were actively engaged, though for the wrong reasons, during elections. And now that the elections are over, they are looking for what to do. And it's not only in that part of the country that we saw it in the Niger Delta between, I think from the election in 2003, which was the first time that thugs and cultists were actively engaged in elections. And when the elections were over, they didn't have anything to do, and then they resorted to this kidnapping. But the key critical question is, what were they doing before the election? If they were also not actively engaged, so election is just a cycle of job. When it comes and goes, the underlying factors that these are young people, able-bodied, willing to work, and there isn't enough for them to do, they will always go into what we're seeing now.
More so if they're armed.
Precisely. You know, Mokwe was asking her guests, Nigerians are ordinarily good people. Why is poverty linked to crime? And I remember my mind immediately went to Ed Murphy's film, Trading Places, where you had two people, one a white guy from a very rich background and Ed Murphy from a poor background who was steeped in crime and all of that. And two rich men were making a bet that nothing, no matter what you do to that white guy because of his family value, he will not take to crime. And they betted and they traded places. This white guy suddenly lost everything he had, ended up on the street. And the summary of the story was that he stole. You know, so poverty may not be the proximate cause, but it's an underlying cause that if not addressed, over time, it will drive an ordinarily good person to do a crime or any other thing he or she thinks to thrive. You know, so we really need to
so it's not a function of environment. Because, I mean, the UK, the US, they still have their own security challenges as well.
Precisely, but they've also invested in a lot of measures to track crime, which is where they say in the long arm of the law, no matter how long you escape, the law will eventually catch up with you. But we don't have the resources to fully invest in having a 21st century security force, given all other priority challenges we are facing as a nation. So we really need to tackle it where it can be.
Yeah, but what about the investments that we're making? Are we investing properly with the right framework?
We are not, which was what I started with. We always invest at treating the symptoms. But the underlying factor that if you invest in human capital development, that is the surest assurance you have that on a sustainable medium to long-term basis, you begin to get handle of it. And as I said, for the first time, in recent time, last year, the foreign remittance, the remittances, diaspora remittances, hit $25 billion. And what is the expected revenue from oil and gas this year? 12.5 billion. So double what we are getting from oil and gas comes from diaspora remittances. And the question is, what are we doing strategically to tap into this? Because these remittances still go to address subsistence level. I mean, from the southeast where I come from, my relatives abroad, what they're bothered mostly about is building country home in the villages, which is dead wealth. You know, sending money when a relative is almost terminally ill, or paying for somebody to go to school. But a state that is desirous of tapping into this can create an office for diaspora relationship at the state level, not the one we're doing at federal level where we're only interested in mentioning names of people who are caught up in crime, forgetting that there are 17 million Nigerians living around the world, majority of whom are doing spectacularly well. We don't sing their praises. We have no framework for tapping into what they are bringing in to address this need. Because if we don't invest actively in education, health, and housing, we can't get a grip of this. And education is not just education for education's sake. It has to be driven by labor market intelligence. What sort of trainings, what sort of skills are trending in the market around which we need to train? And then what sort of skills do we need for the future?
You know, speaking about intelligence, this is another area where there's been several questions. For instance, this same pattern, this kidnapping that, you know, so much attention in the Abuja Kaduna. Remember Lagos-Ibadan Expressway some time ago witnessed the same thing. Different regions seem to have this kind of challenge. So it does appear as though there seems to be some sort of copycat crime in some other areas. So why is it then that we've got several security arms and departments in this country funded heavily with all the infrastructure, at least to a large extent? They always say they have intel, they have all this, they submit it to the relevant authorities. But does it appear that we still make use of them, or do we question the quality of intel?
No, I mean, in criminology, we say it's not the severity of punishment that deters would-be criminal. It's the certainty of punishment that if you commit the crime, you will be caught. So we are in a country where people get away with blue murder, tons and tons, and a reward. So people looking on the sideline will say, oh, this thing is trending, so let's go into it. Kidnapping started in the Niger Delta in the early 2000s, and people say, oh, it's only the expatriates that they are targeting. But when there are no expatriates again to kidnap, what did they do? They turned on nationals. And those across the border between Rivers and Abia State, saying that it was lucrative in Rivers State and Niger Delta. Not only lucrative, the government even placed them on salary through the amnesty. Osikanku and others launched their own in the forest of Abia State. And then it spread. And again, what we're seeing in Abuja Kaduna Road, people forget that a few years ago it used to be Lagos-Ibadan Road. They used to throw all kinds of things on the road to stop motorists. And once they are trapped, they come from the bush and attack them, which is exactly what is happening in Abuja. And what do? We think is just happening uniquely for the first time. So what we do is, especially when the rich are involved, is to fill the road with police officers. And what will happen? Crime displacement. If it becomes difficult for them to operate in Abuja, Kaduna Road, they move to another axis where it is easier. So until you really get to the bottom of driving it, which means we need to invest actively in social development of our youth, we'll just be running a catch-up game, because it's now a desperate game of catch-up.
Wow. Markwa?
Well, yes, I'm sure that Professor Estefanos or Professor Zabadi Vegepadunu will definitely have a view on that one. He's talking about displacement now, talking about measures. Why the measures we have seen so far put in place have not worked in many instances. So, for instance, the Operation Puff Adder, which was put in place for Kaduna-Abuja Road, you know, initially seemed to have recorded some fruit, but all of a sudden, it doesn't look like it's been followed through. That's how it appears. We could be wrong. I mean, I could be wrong in posing that question, but what exactly is your impression of measures put in place?
Well, as I was saying before, this is no matter of going to television to Christian some operation by whatever name. You have to get back to the institutions. Have you recruited the right people? Have you trained them? Have you properly motivated them by way of welfare to put their lives on the line? Do you have arrangements where they are well led also? If you have those things, then you'll see results. But we are in this country, I think sometimes the impression is given, once you go and say it, then it happens. No, it does not. So institutional rot also comes to the fore. You have declared, you have made a boost, but the institution cannot carry it to the logical conclusion. For me, that is a major issue. And don't forget also that because of this problem with institutions, the cohesion that should be there also is lacking. I mean, we also have cases where those who should be actively engaged in combating these crimes may also be feeding. It's almost as if you launch puff adder. You are actually informing these fellows what you are going to do and where you are coming from.
Yeah, but some people also argue, it was 2 days ago, even though it's a question would have loved to pose to him on Sunrise today. We had a guest on the news at 10 who alleged that some of the operatives themselves are involved in this. One of the reasons why it's going on is because some of the operatives themselves are involved in this matter. He said he was a victim of kidnapping, and he noticed that some of the people who kidnapped him, he's a former security agent as well, were people who were military personnel who had passes and were eager to quickly get the transaction wound up so that they could go back before their passes expired. There's a question of whether or not, you know, there are people who are infiltrating the system. That's one. There's also the question of whether the people in the system, are they giving up? Because all of these questions which you have also posed cannot be answered satisfactorily. The directive from the Acting Inspector General of Police to the Commissioners of Police, which he deployed yesterday, was to reclaim the space from criminals. Isn't that the Commissioners of Police are giving up the spaces within their territory, you know, to the criminals and throwing their hands up in the air? What precisely is going on?
This is what I was talking about when I started by talking about politicization. The recruitment process is not what it used to be when you were having good results. I mean, they don't screen people that come in. And there have been talks about some unholy ways of getting people in. And what do you expect? This is part of what you will get. So I am not sure that the average police or whatever security agency person is committed to whatever it is that are the institutional values. I think that we all need to be professional wherever we find ourselves, whether as teachers, whether as police, whether as military, whether as politicians, and especially as politicians. Professionalism involves ethics, values, proper training, and the right attitude to do the right thing. There is lack of professionalism across the sectors of life in this country. I think we need to go back there. That is what will help us to not only remedy the situation, but to reverse it. Evil is celebrated as good. If you are doing the right thing, you are not recognized. In fact, you are seen to be a fool and all that. Those things have to change. So if we do that, you will get the right people elected, you will get the right people appointed, you will get the right people promoted. And everybody will take lesson from that and refrain from doing the wrong things. But where somebody does wrong and nothing happens, in fact, they may even get promoted, that is going to encourage more and more people to do the wrong thing. And this is, my view, is what we are seeing. And unless, as a country, we get back from that track and take the right one we have left of honesty, of integrity, like I said, professionalism encapsulates all that. We need to be professional in whatever we're doing.
Oh, Prof, we have to thank you for coming on Sunrise Today this morning. We quickly hand over now to Lagos. Chimley.
Oh, yes, indeed. Do you think that the challenge we face right now is a wake-up call that we're going to heed to be professional, as Prof suggested?
Well, one hopes so, but they say hope is good for breakfast, still for dinner. We've had this kind of discussion again, but we have a window of opportunity. We are in the transitional period of inauguration of second term of President Buhari's administration. One would hope that he has used this first term to learn the lessons about what worked, what didn't work, and what was promising, and that coming back will be a bit more professional, a bit more strategic in dealing with this thing. And in that light, we'll have to map out how we deal with this. There's something that needs to be done now. What is happening between Abuja and Kaduna needs to be quickly arrested, but knowing that it will just give us a temporary reprieve within which we need to plan, because they will move to another area. And I think one of the things they should prioritize in incoming admin was to do with our diaspora. How do we build the kind of thing we saw or see in Philippines and in India, where every local government or district in India has an office for diaspora relationship? Whatever then, what does it take to do a survey of the human capital we have around the world to draw from? What does it take to do a survey when people are sending money home? What is uppermost in there? What do they want government to put in place for this money to be channeled at productive and investment that will affect all? Because what we are doing now, borrowing, we can't borrow ourselves out of this social problem. Investment, especially from our diaspora community, if we effectively engage them, is one of the way out.
Well, on that point, Mr. Innocent Chukwuma is the Regional Director for West Africa for Ford Foundation. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you.
Well, that is the show today. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. I'm Chamberlain Uso.
I'm Ayo Makire.
And I'm Mao Yusuf. Thank you.